Good afternoon. It's Sunday, July 12th, 2020, and coming to you live from the Lonely Tree Media Studios in beautiful Ellensburg, Washington. It's the Best Lamb Sports Show. I'm your host, David Lamb. With me, as always, is my son, Parker. Say hi, Parker.
What's going on, everybody?
We are live streaming on YouTube every weekend. We're on Twitter at Lamb Sports, on Facebook under the Best Lamb Sports Show. You can send us an email, lambsports@gmail.com, and please check out our webpage, www.lambsports.com. So, the first part of today's show, as it always, is brought to you by The Range in Yakima. The Range is Central Washington's premier indoor shooting facility at 34,000 square feet. The Range is an all-inclusive facility offering firearm training, retail firearm sales and supplies, full gunsmithing and repairs, custom builds, and Cerakote services all under one roof. Open Tuesday through Sunday from 11 to 7. Go see our friends at The Range, 1701 Garrettson Lane in Yakima. Phone number is 509-571-1449. The Range, educate, equip, and empower. So, a lot of sports news.
There's been some stuff happening.
Yeah, a lot of stuff going on. We got a lot of things to talk about today. Just in general, it has been interesting. Patrick Mahomes. We're going to talk about that. The NBA and their social justice messages. We've got, we've got Stanford University cutting sports. We've got, it just was like a barrage of information. College football's making decisions. Everybody's trying to keep up with the outbreak. It has been interesting, for sure.
Yeah.
So, what we got is the trivia question. Let's start off with the trivia question because we do that. There's a lot going on. I'm just saying. So the trivia question is brought to you by Stave & Stone Wine Estates in Hood River. Stave & Stone. The winery at Broken Boulder Vineyards open from 12 to 6 Wednesday through Monday. Head out there and join them for a relaxing glass on the patio with stunning views of Mount Adams. The downtown tasting room is open Thursday through Sunday from 12 to 6. The vineyard tasting room is at 3827 Fletcher Drive. The downtown address is 210 Oak Street. Find out more, order wine, go to staveandstone.com, email them info@staveandstone.com, or call 541-946-3750. That's 541-WINE-750. Stave & Stone, wines with personality. So I dug up a hard trivia question today.
Oh boy.
Coming up, because we're going to start talking about the NFL and the upcoming season. We're going to talk about rookies today. We're going to talk about, the AFC preview is going to be here in a couple weeks. We're going to talk about all kinds of stuff. As we do this, I decided we're going to start having NFL trivia questions to get ourselves prepped for the season. And I decided I wanted to make the first one a good one. So the first trivia question is a 3-part answer. Right? So
I guess.
So here you go. Here we go. So the trivia question is, since 1958, the NFL's season rushing leader has rushed for over 1,000 yards every season except one.
Ooh.
What year was it? Who did it? And how many yards did he actually rush for?
Interesting.
So that's the question. Since 1958, only one time has the NFL rushing leader not rushed for 1,000 yards. That's who we're looking for. Who was it? And what team did he play for? There you go. 4-part question. I just made it extra hard.
All right.
But I feel like if you know the first 3 parts, you got the 4th part. So
yeah, probably it's easy after that.
Yeah, it's no brainer now, right? So anyway, that brings us to our news and notes for the day. Let's get started with the PGA Tour, which just finished the Workday Charity Open at Muirfield Village Golf Club in Dublin, Ohio. Justin Thomas and Colin Morikawa were tied at 19 under after the final round. Went to a playoff, and Morikawa won it on the 3rd playoff hole. Bryson DeChambeau was the winner of last week's Rocket Mortgage Classic, in case anyone was wondering. The NASCAR race is currently underway, so NASCAR is at the Quaker State 400 presented by Walmart at Kentucky Speedway in Sparta, Kentucky. Do you know where Sparta, Kentucky is, Parker?
I do not know.
Sparta, Kentucky is halfway between Louisville and Cincinnati. And okay. I had no idea. I had to look it up. It literally looks like it's in the middle of nowhere. So, but
it's a good place to put a racetrack.
I think so, because you're probably not, the noise issue is not an issue if there's nobody around. Kyle Busch won the pole for today's race. The current race leader is Eric Almirola. They have gone 122 laps out of the 267 total. And Joey Logano's in second. Ryan Blaney's in third. Last week's winner of the Brickyard 400, which actually has a whole longer name, and I had no idea that it was this long a name. But the last week's race was the Big Machine Hand Sanitizer 400.
The Big Machine Hand Sanitizer
Yeah,
400.
yeah. It sounds like they just make stuff up to me now.
They really do.
When I when I hear the actual name of it, and that was at Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and that's normally what they call the Brickyard 400, but it was called that's the official name, the Big Machine Hand Sanitizer 400, powered by Big Machine Records. Anyway, so Kevin Harvick won last weekend's race, and he leads the Cup Series standings over second place Chase Elliott and third place Brad Keselowski. Korean baseball still happening. The NC Dinos are at 39-17 on the season. They're 5.5 games clear of the Kiwoom Heroes and 6 ahead of the Doosan Bears. The Dinos and LG Twins had the first tie of the season on Saturday, as they were locked up at 6 each after 12 innings. And after 12 innings, you have a tie. So I'm not sure how I feel about that.
My interest in Korean baseball is waning with the rise of other sports again.
Yeah, but we're committed for the season. We're going to keep track of this for you.
Yeah,
I want to know who wins
out there.
Right. At this point, I'm 56 games in. I'm vested in it. I got to know.
Next year we're buying jerseys.
Right. I want one of the little NC Dino stuffed animals, the stuffed dinosaur. That's what I want. So I'm gonna have to order one of those. So, put it here in the studio so everyone can see it when we finally decide to go video at some point. Anyway, those games, the Korean baseball games, are on ESPN at around 2 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. So if you're an insomniac or you work nights, you should go check it out. It is a terrible time to watch baseball. But like I said, if you aren't doing anything else and you're really, really tired, you wake up and you just can't sleep, that's a great time to watch that baseball, because those guys don't really talk about baseball. The announcers, they have other things to talk about. And
Lots of other stuff.
And the baseball's not great. I mean, it's okay. It's like watching a minor league baseball game, probably a AA baseball game. It's what it feels like anyway. So,
right?
Yeah, I mean, it's not terrible, but it's definitely, and it's baseball. It fills in for that, that craving. So anyway, so the Women's Soccer League Challenge Cup is still going on at Zions Bank Stadium in Harriman, Utah. The North Carolina Courage are the only undefeated team. They lead the standings with 9 points. The Washington Spirit are in second place with 7 points after 4 games. The Portland Thorns play the OL Reign on Monday at 9:30 a.m. Pacific. That's a crazy start time to me for a soccer game. Since it's in Utah, I guess it'll be 10:30 a.m. local time. And Portland has played 3 games. They've tied 2 and lost 1. They have 2 points. They are in desperate need of a win. Those games can be seen on CBS All Access if you pay the money. Yeah. I'm not sure how many people are doing that. The MLS's back tournament has kicked off, and it's already having to postpone games. Today's match between the Toronto FC and DC United has been postponed because of a positive coronavirus test on DC United team. I think you're just going to run into that. I think that is just a thing that's going to happen, and there's no way around it. It's just going to wreak havoc with schedules, and you're going to have to postpone or reschedule games. So, yeah, the Portland Timbers play the LA Galaxy tomorrow night at 7:30 p.m. That is on FS1. So if you're a Portland Timbers fan, that's their first game back in action in the group stage of the MLS's back tournament. So it's we watched some MLS soccer over the weekend. I did a couple different games, and I will tell you this: it has looked not great. The MLS does have this crazy frenetic pace about it, where it's not like European soccer. European soccer is very calm. It's methodical. MLS has this back and forth, let's hurry up and do something kind of attitude. And if you like fast-paced things, that's great. But when nothing happens, when you go super fast, for 90 minutes and then the score is 0-0, that is not very exciting.
It's not what you want to see.
It's not great entertainment on TV, because I watched, I'm looking at the scores here for the MLS since they've come back. And they started with a 2-1 Orlando win over Miami. But since then, it's been 1-0, 1-0, 0-0, 1-0, and then 4-0 last night. Columbus beat Cincinnati. So
Seems like the goalies were the only ones training in the offseason.
that's what, that's exactly what it sounds like. So there's been in what 6 games? There's been a total of 10 goals,
Ooh.
and 4 of them came last night. Um, anyway, that was not very exciting. It hasn't been good to watch. I don't think it's necessarily great for the sport that they kind of look rusty. To be honest with you, I mean, you had all that time to prepare. I guess it's hard to do without teammates and get the timing down and all that still. But I still kind of think of soccer as an individual sport that you don't your teammates other than the speed. You know what I mean? Knowing the speed of your teammates and where they're going to be when you
Yeah.
you have a lot of individual skill that can make up for that. So at least that's what I thought. I don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, Messi and Ronaldo can carry teams full of nobodies. So
Right. I
an
mean,
individual can make up for a lot.
for sure. So Formula One racing. I actually watched the Formula One race this morning. Lewis Hamilton easily won the Styrian Grand Prix in Austria this morning. Hamilton was the pole sitter and was never really challenged. He pretty much ran away with it. His Mercedes teammate Valtteri Bottas finished second after passing Max Verstappen late in the race, like on the third to last lap. Verstappen finished in third place for the Red Bull team. Bottas was the winner of last weekend's Austrian Grand Prix.
Interesting.
Yeah, it actually. So anybody who's ever watched a NASCAR race that's not a NASCAR fan, you've seen one, right? You've at least watched what part of one?
I've watched whole ones,
Okay,
yes.
so it's kind of this is gonna sound terrible. I don't want to alienate a fan base if they're out there, but the NASCAR race is kind of boring.
It really is.
It doesn't have other than crashes. Let's admit that's the most exciting part. You know, if you get two guys who are racing for a position at the last lap, okay, that's exciting. But until then, you know, on lap 3, if one guy passes another and it's close and they're battling for a whole lap trying to pass each other, you don't think much of it because who knows what's going to happen to those two guys? One of them could be in last place at the end. But you watch the end, the last 2 or 3 laps, because that's exciting, and you know, as a fan of you know I don't know, crashes, I guess. You want to see a crash. You want to see that happen. You don't want to make it hurt, but you want to see that because it's interesting to watch the field and how they react, and it becomes a different kind of driving other than just guys making left-hand turns. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So Formula One has less drivers. There's only 20 in a race. They have less laps. They literally have a time limit. There's a 2-hour time limit, and they literally will cut it off. So you don't have this ongoing, you know, oh, we're driving 600 miles no matter how long it takes and how many rain delays we have, right? Because
Yeah.
that's what happens in NASCAR.
How many caution laps we get?
Yeah, I mean, we had a 6-hour rain delay in the middle, and we had 27 cautions because every other lap someone hit each other, and the race took 12 hours. So I'm like, no, I don't want to see that. I don't have I don't have the time to sit and watch a race for 4, 5, 6 hours. And B,
Yeah.
if you know that there's a time constraint and you're pushing towards that time, well, then the guys are going to be racing harder to try and win because you know the time is there. Anyway,
Right.
the Formula One races are actually pretty interesting to watch. Their pit stops are. I watched a guy make a pit stop today, change 4 tires in 2.1 seconds.
That's ridiculous.
That was ridiculous. That's what I said.
And now I'm wondering what Les Schwab's excuse is for making me wait 15, 20 minutes when you got champions out there slapping them on in under 10 seconds.
Right? I mean, we're clearly not going to the right place to get tires done, and it probably costs a little more to have the Formula One team. But I don't know. It was just interesting to watch them pull into the pits, and they're right there, and they literally, it's like one hub that they take off the tire, and then they slap the tire on, and it's back on. And it was so fast. There's a team for each tire, and NASCAR has those, but they gotta, I don't know, something about it takes longer. They got more hubs, or they got more, lug nuts they got to take off. I don't know how it works exactly, but
well, there's the fuel guy, and then there's the most
yeah,
important position of all, which is the squeegee guy.
the squeegee guy with that long pole.
He comes flying over that little wall, and he just cleans it off. And he does a better job than we've ever done cleaning our windows.
And it's funny because the Formula One cars don't have windows.
Right, no squeegee guy.
There's no squeegee guy, so they've
Don't
eliminated
even need him.
payrolls down, and but they got some tremendous cam views. It was really fun to watch. I have to admit, it was last 2 weeks, last two races. I watched the entire race, and it has been more interesting than I thought it would be. So I'm not saying I'm a Formula One fan yet, but I'm just saying I'm.
You're getting there.
You could convince me to watch it again. It wouldn't take that much. Well, right now, especially when there's nothing else to watch. So,
That's fair.
right. So we're going to move into the meat of today's show and what we're going to call the second half. It's actually going to take a little longer than a half, but that's okay. But the second half of the show, as always, is brought to you by Boss Kitty Hand-Dyed Yarns. Go to bosskittyshop.com for your yarns, notions, and Boss Kitty merchandise. I have a Boss Kitty mug, and it's fantastic. I'm just saying. People will ask all the time because it has the Boss Kitty logo on it, and people look and go, "Where'd you get that?" Anyway, just saying. You can pick up a bosskittyshop.com gift card there also, and as a special treat for our listeners, they're offering a one-time use coupon for 15% off your next purchase. Just use the coupon code LAMBSPORTS at checkout. That's bosskittyshop.com. Boss Kitty, yarn so boss, you'll knit your pants.
Mm-hmm.
So, that brings us to some interesting stuff that we need to talk about. And
Oh boy.
we're going to start with the statements or releases by college football conferences and schools that have happened this past week that have basically changed what we are expecting to see out of college football in the fall.
That's right.
So the Big Ten announced, and I'm not sure which day it was they announced it, to be honest with you. I didn't not even have that up here. But the Big Ten announced that they were going to a conference-only schedule and that all non-conference games would be canceled, which was devastating news for all of us Oregon fans because that meant that the Ohio State-Oregon game is no longer.
Right. And all of those Washington fans, that means that the Washington-Michigan game was no longer.
Correct. Those were like the two biggest matchups in the Big Ten, Pac-12, and that was heartbreaking because those are the games you love to see. Even if you're not an Oregon or Ohio State fan, you would have loved to have watched that football. That's a college football dream right there.
I was on the fence about getting season tickets against it this year, but that game was the game that was like, all right, I got to go to it. I can't not go to that game.
Yeah.
Well, here we are.
That's what I was saying. I was literally thinking, man, that's difficult in terms of, what's a season ticket worth now because you've just taken away, well, number one, 3 home games right
Yeah,
off
I
the
hope they
bat.
make it. I hope they make them up.
Yeah, if they could find a way, that would be great. But I mean, heck, right now I'm just be happy if they played some football.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to. I think it's going to die off.
So right now, the ACC and the Big 12 and the SEC have not released statements, but in terms of what they plan to do, the ACC did release a statement. Commissioner John Swafford said, basically health and safety of their student athletes, coaches, and administrators is a top priority, and that they prepared numerous scenarios with regards to fall athletics, and that they expect a decision by their board of directors in late July. So we're nearing late July rapidly. Today's the 12th, so I think they're probably going to have to be in that same boat. Wouldn't you imagine?
Yeah, I mean, everyone around you is making these great, not great decisions. They're making these decisions, and there's no way you're gonna be the if like the SEC. The SEC will be the one conference to try and fail because it means so much to their conference to play football. It means so much to the people down there and to their schools. That revenue is essential to their survival. But everyone around you is changing it up. Everyone around you's, and also I don't understand how colliding bodies between the Wisconsin players and the Ohio State players is different than colliding bodies between the Oregon players and the Ohio State players. But somebody somewhere has determined that's less of a risk. I guess
Well,
maybe it's travel related.
yeah. So the reason they decided on this was that they decided the conference games would be easier to reschedule or move to a different site if necessary.
Oh, okay, that makes a little more
Because
sense.
they're local, you're not traveling as far. I mean, it's hard to reschedule Oregon if you're traveling to Oregon if you're Ohio State, and they cancel it at the last minute. It would be really hard to move it to somewhere else. Where are you going to move it to? So, yeah,
Yeah,
it's just easier. The conference schedule's kind of set. There's smaller travel times. The Big Ten is relatively close together and compact as opposed to something like the Pac-12. You know, um, heck, almost all the conferences are better closer together than the Pac-12. The SEC's got quite a range. If you go from uh, Columbia, Missouri to um,
Florida.
Gainesville, Florida, that's a haul. That's a little bit of a trek, but um, for the most part, and then the ACC has a little bit. If you count um, what up to Syracuse.
Syracuse, yeah.
Yeah,
Boston
you,
College,
you
something
got to
like
go
that.
from Syracuse to Miami.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a bit of waste.
that's a bit of a trip too.
That's not
so
great.
so the travel already is there for him. I mean, that's going to be hard anyway. But I'm not. I understand the move. I get it. I understand why we're doing it, and I would think that the health and safety is super super important. But just disappointed because we were looking forward to those inter conference football games are what enables you to compare teams,
Right.
because otherwise you just don't know if the conference is great or crappy when the team plays and dominates them or gets hammered by their own conference. You don't know how good you are because you don't have anybody to compare them against.
Right.
So,
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm hoping what they do though is I'm hoping at least for the Pac-12, I'm hoping they decide, okay, well we dropped out 3, non-conference games. Let's just have everyone play each other again. Back like the old days of the Pac-10. You can do that now. You have the spots available.
well,
No sense you don't just play everybody in the conference.
yeah, well, my thought was there are teams that are close in proximity that aren't in your conference. The Big Ten has the luxury of having the MAC nearby,
That's
those kind of
true.
things. And they've already canceled the games, but if you needed to throw a team in there, there are teams nearby that it wouldn't be that hard to go schedule a game relatively quickly and play. The Pac 12 doesn't have the
Uh,
luxury of that in the North, especially.
yeah,
But there are teams. Boise State um, is the only FBS school in the North by Oregon and Washington. You know what I mean? There's not Utah State. Um,
Utah State.
right. Utah State's in
Then you
there.
start getting into the California schools, San
Right.
Diego State and things
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. You'd have to play those schools because neither Oregon nor Washington has another FBS school outside of Oregon State, Washington State. The
We don't
Pac
have
12
the
schools.
luxury of being in Florida and having Florida State and Florida still be able to play their rivalry because they're only a couple 100 miles away.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you have Florida, Florida State, and Miami, right?
Yeah.
That are all, and then you also have
UCF,
Florida.
USF.
Yep. Yep. Florida Atlantic, Florida International. You've got all these schools that are there, and you could just literally have a conference that's just Florida, and I don't know why they don't. Um, you could literally have a conference that's just Florida teams, and it would be a really good conference. But
Probably, yeah.
who's the loser in all this, and I've sat here and thought about it a number of times, is Notre Dame.
Yeah, I was thinking about that the other day. Independent schools.
So Notre Dame on their schedule had USC and Stanford. Well, they're now canceled, and I believe they had Michigan still back on their schedule. Michigan or Michigan State. So that game's canceled. So there's 3 games out. In addition to those games, Wake Forest, Pittsburgh, Duke, Georgia Tech, Clemson, and Louisville are on their schedule.
So if the
So
ACC decides to not
yeah,
do it,
then they're done. Then they're done. If the ACC decides to cancel, the only teams left are Arkansas, Western Michigan, and Navy on their schedule.
and I bet Navy's not going to do it.
Well, I mean, they might. I don't know. But it just, God, that's got to be rough. And I telling you, this is what you get for not joining a conference, Notre Dame. Um,
I just thought I'd take Corona to get them to realize that.
yeah, it's going to be a sad though. I think it's just the beginning of what's going to happen and what's going to get canceled. I think you're going to see more games. I don't think it's going to be football like we know it. And I would imagine that as soon as you start trying to get, because they've already got schools that are shutting down practice because of positive tests. And how are you going to manage that if you can't even practice together as a team? How are you going to play a game? And the risk for injury goes up if you're not practicing, if you're not together as a team. You know what I mean? There's all kinds of, side effects of just the positive test, just one positive test, and it affects the entire team. So I don't know. I don't know how they're going to finish it. I don't know how they're going to make it work. I would love to watch college football. I think it's probably the best product in terms of sports product that's actually on TV. Correct me
That's
if I'm
fair.
wrong. Would you think that's
That's
right?
I think that's fair. I think it's probably the most wholesome of the products left.
Oh, I don't know about
Uh,
wholesome.
no, it's definitely got its issues, and it's
Oh,
definitely got a little bit of corruption. But at the end of the day, when you're looking at the game, the guys on the field are all just competing to get to the next level.
yeah.
Kind of regardless of how much money the school's making or how big the broadcast is, the guys on the field aren't guaranteed anything yet.
It's
So
true.
that's what makes it wholesome. That's what makes a player running for 2,000 yards in college so special because he just secured himself a financial future in the NFL.
Yeah. So yeah, you're right. And I just it college football is one of those games where you feel like anybody could win the game at any point in time. Just like they say, any given Sunday in the NFL, not so much. I don't think in the NFL. I don't think that's true. But
I'm not watching that that Chiefs Jets game going any given Sunday.
right, yeah, no, there is no chance that that's happening. But you know in football that it can happen. And you know in college football especially that you watched Appalachian State beat Michigan. You watched those upsets. That kind of thing can happen. You watched
Yeah.
Boise State win a bowl game against Oklahoma. You watched, you
Watched
know,
UCF go undefeated and win a title.
right? And
Allegedly.
a share of a fictional title. Yeah, they I don't know. I like watching college football because it just you don't know what's going to happen, and as much as you think you do, you just don't, and it's more fun to watch that way. Um, so that being said, Stanford University this week put out a pretty disheartening statement saying that they're going to discontinue 11 of their varsity sports programs at the conclusion of the 2020-2021 academic year. And those are men's and women's fencing, field hockey, lightweight rowing, men's rowing, co ed and women's sailing, squash, synchronized swimming, men's volleyball, and wrestling. So basically said, hey, you got one more year and then we're going to get rid of them. It's also, you know, 20 support staff positions. They're going to get eliminated as part of the realignment. It affects 240 athletes and 22 coaches. There's a lot of people that have done that in that sport, and the sports, as they said in their letter, the sports were built by more than 4,000 alumni whose contributions, led to 20 national championships, 27 Olympic medals, and an untold number of academic and professional achievements. So not only do you going to lose the athlete part, you're going to lose the student part. And Stanford attracts, best and the brightest, smart people. And if you don't have, let's say, I don't know, synchronized swimming, if someone was going to come there for that reason and get a scholarship, they may be going somewhere else. And not only do you lose the athlete, you lose the mind, the student that goes with it. And they make a contribution to some other university or discover the cure for cancer somewhere else. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so those are tough. I mean, that is a tough decision. This is the first school that said this. Stanford's a private school, and you would think of any of the schools, like especially in the Pac-12, Stanford and USC, those two would have the monetary resources to keep things going. But apparently, Stanford has already made that decision. No, this is the best way forward. Um, Probably just the first of many, don't you think?
Absolutely. I mean, in being fair, most of those, I didn't know Stanford had a squash team. All right. Most people did not know Stanford had a squash team. You were probably aware that they had crew and things like that, but maybe you didn't know that they had a men's volleyball team. Maybe you did. Maybe if you're in California, you're well aware. But a lot of these sports are not the big global impact sports, at least in terms of like television and viewership and things like that. So there's going to be a lot of people who are going to whiff at this, but it's a symptom of things to come. It's a symptom of smaller schools entirely getting rid of all athletics.
Yeah.
If it's going to affect a school like Stanford, what do you think it's going to do to your local state university?
Yeah, the smaller the FCS type football
Yep.
schools, and the you know what I
Yep.
mean, where the only reason they have other sports is because they have football, and it draws
Yeah.
enough revenue in to support everything else. And if you didn't have any college football this fall, how would you support women's softball in the spring? How do you support track and field, cross country, whatever it is that you have? And most of those schools have those programs. Um, you can't afford to, and it's gonna be it's going to be tough. And the hard part about it is that you're going to you're going to get rid of them this year or next year, or if you decide not, if they decide the school we can't play any games, or the NCAA or the conference decides we're not playing any of those games this year. Okay, now what do those athletes who were juniors, who this was, oh wait, what am I going to do next year? Are we going to have one next year? Do we know yet? I mean, there's so much uncertainty. You don't even know what those students are going to do if you're even going to have a place to play your sport. Is that now the school you want to go to? Right?
Right.
Opens up a whole new transfer portal. Does it make it so that your larger schools, the example, let's use example of Portland State. So Portland State decides, you know what? If we can't play football, then we can't have any sport because we're not going to have any revenue, right?
Right.
They cut everything down, and we don't play anything this year. Where do all those students that are pretty good at what they do, are they all going to say, oh, well, I need to go to a bigger school now because I want to still try and play basketball, or I want to still try and play whatever, and you're going to have this flood of people to the larger schools, and even there, like Stanford is cutting programs,
Yeah.
and how are they going to even? You might just have a whole bunch of athletes that are just out of luck.
Yeah, it's I don't know because so Portland State's schedule to start the season was at Arizona, at Oregon State.
Yeah,
Those are gone.
those
So
are gone.
that probably was $500,000 a piece per game, to come take a butt whooping, but then pays for all of your other sports. So when you look across the rest of their schedule, you're seeing just conference teams: Eastern, Sac State, Weber State, Cal Poly, North Dakota. But none of these games, these don't make you money. Not in a real way because they're not cross conference. They're most
Right,
of them are small. They're not that big a deal. So they're gonna have to look and go, okay, well, we're not gonna make any money on this. Basketball might be our next best shot, provided all of their schools don't start canceling things, because they usually have a couple big games that they go. Last year they played Indiana, the year before, and at Hawaii and things like that. But then these athletes, like you said, if they cancel football, and they can't afford to stop football and then start it again. There are some schools that I think that have that luxury. There are big schools that have the luxury to stop a sport, say, all right, we got to put it on hold for a year. And
yeah,
then there are some that do not, because are you going to fire all your coaches? If you're not going to fire all your coaches, then you have to be making some kind of money to pay for them.
right,
And how are you going to pay for your facilities? Portland State just built a brand new basketball stadium that opened up last year or 2 years ago, something like that, and that was a couple $1 million. How are you going to continue to pay for that and
right,
pay to keep the lights on in your building? For small schools, you can't do that. Stanford doing this as a private school with reserves of money, the likes of which we probably couldn't even imagine. They made a business decision that sets a precedent for all of the other schools to say, hey, what sports don't matter?
yeah,
And can we afford sports at all?
right.
And that's where we're heading.
It's a big statement. I mean, it definitely comes out as like you're saying, the benchmark, so to speak, of, oh well, we're not going to have these next year because we decided it makes more financial sense. And how many athletic directors and university presidents are going to go, huh? Well, if they can't, what are what's our financial situation? What should we be cutting?
Right. I
And
mean, how long is Portland State going to continue to field a tennis team that doesn't win titles or that doesn't make money? Like, oh, Stanford cut theirs. Or Stanford cut their one of their big programs. Why not just cut this one too?
yeah, it's um it's interesting, and I feel like there are certain sports that I mean, let let's be honest. I don't know the particulars. I will totally be honest with you. Men's and women's fencing. Is it an expensive sport to operate?
I can imagine that the equipment is expensive because it's unusual.
Specialized equipment?
Yeah, it's unique equipment, and maybe the training. I mean, the facility is, you
Right.
have a building, you keep using the building over and over again. It's not like that's a difficult thing to do. And I think that your hopes in fencing lie on people going to the Olympics
Right.
and then recontributing to your school.
If you have an Olympics that doesn't get
Yeah,
canceled.
if you have an Olympics that doesn't get canceled, where fencing would have been played this past year.
Right, right. Yeah, we just go through that? I mean, seems like
Yeah,
anyway, I don't know I don't so fencing is yeah, you definitely can't go down to Dick's Sporting Goods and pick up your fencing equipment. I mean, it's not one of those things they have on the rack.
I've never
Um,
seen it on the rack
no,
there.
no. So there are certain sports, and they've listed. I mean, while I would imagine you probably can find field hockey somewhere. field hockey equipment. But rowing is one of those things where, I'll admit I don't know what lightweight rowing is as opposed to men's rowing or, and then one of these things listed as co-ed sailing. Well, I assume that's, men and women sailing in a boat, like sailing. But what kind of boat are we talking about? And I don't know what that. I know what squash is. Great. Synchronized swimming. Yeah. Men's volleyball and men's wrestling. I get those. How expensive are those things to operate? Men's volleyball is travel. It's got to be travel related, right? That's what makes
Oh,
it
it's all
expensive.
travel related.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you literally just throw a ball out there and they smack it. You got a ball, you got a net. Those are already paid for. You already own them. It's not like you got to go buy a new one. So,
Yeah.
and referees, you got to pay for the officials. And in
The
volleyball,
officials. Yep.
there's only a couple. So, you know, men's wrestling. There you go. When wrestling happens, you've only got one official. Literally, you got a scorekeeper and you got all that stuff, but you only need one official. He's on the mat. That's what he does. And those uniforms can't cost that much, right?
You'd be surprised. You'd be
they're,
surprised.
they're not that big.
I've looked at the invoices
For
from like Portland State's wrestling team back in the day, and that's
yeah.
back when they were getting made by like somebody's cousin was making their uniforms. Those invoices are still pretty decent size. No,
Oh my.
all that equipment and stuff. You're right. The equipment doesn't cost a ton when you're buying volleyball stuff. I mean, you have to buy them shoes for training. You have to buy them sweatpants, sweatshirts, t-shirts, shorts, compression shorts, socks, and then you have to buy their game day uniforms, whatever those might be, sunglasses, since I'm sure they play in the sun. Then you have the volleyballs. Then you're moved on to travel for all these people. Oh, and I forgot their bags, backpacks, duffel bags, things like that.
Sure.
All that stuff. You end up outfitting an athlete for $2,000 to outfit them for a season. If you have 10 of those guys, well, you've spent quite a bit of money already.
Yeah.
And now, are they going to make that back? And if they're not going to make that back, then you have to have another sport that's going to make that back for them.
Yeah. So
So,
one of the things that Stanford said was that the escalating costs of operating the large athletics department was what prompted the decision. But they had a structural deficit apparently for several years prior to the pandemic, and they were projected to exceed $12 million deficit in fiscal year 21 and to grow
ooh,
steadily. Yeah, they were talking about a cumulative shortfall of nearly $70 million over the next 3 years, according to their letter.
god
So
dang.
so they were due to cut some anyway. I mean, they couldn't afford to have. I mean, and Stanford is one of those schools that has about 100 sports. I mean, if you name the sport, they've got it or they had it. So um, that's how they win all those national titles and look good on the Pac-12 is that they're also the winners in men's and women's tennis, men's and women's golf. The sports that aren't necessarily top tier sports. For them they are. I mean, that is golf is a big sport there. Tiger
It's a
Woods went
big
to
deal.
Stanford. Yeah.
Yep.
So you just those lower tiered sports that no one's gonna. There's no spectators. Wrestling is one of those that I thought was kind of surprising on that list because I think wrestling does get spectators. It does have a following, and it is something that I thought would be pretty easy to put on in terms of what you need. I mean, you need a mat, you need a referee. Okay. Well, you gotta have lights in the gym and the facility, but you already got that. I mean, it's already there.
Concession stand,
Well, then
parking attendants.
I think it's BYOB at that point. I
I
think
mean, there's a way we could all do it cheap, but at what point does cheap compromise the visual integrity of your university?
right. Does Stanford need to have a bake sale? Is my question. And
They're holding a car wash to keep the sailing team alive. I'm on board.
right. I mean, I think we should all go. I think that's a. Anyway, so I hope it doesn't affect everybody the same way. And I hope it's not going to be that big a deal. But I think that you're just going to see more and more of those kind of statements, and more of the conferences with regards to football and fall sports in general, just saying we're not doing it. The Ivy League's already canceled their sports and said we're not doing that. So,
Yeah,
and if anybody had an Ivy League team on their schedule, no, you're not playing them. And
that's gone.
how are we gonna go through a season without a Harvard Yale game, football game? What is really? All right. So that's gonna bring us into the professionals. Let's talk about the NFL for a minute. So Patrick Mahomes this week just made a couple dollars. Um,
Yeah, a few.
Yeah, I mean, he got
He could
signed.
he could buy us dinner now.
You know what? I'm going to call him. I'm going to do that. See if he wants to be on the show and buy us dinner. I think that'd be great. Um, so I think 10-year extension, contract extension. His contract isn't even up. He has this year and next year still in his contract, current contract, and he signed a 10-year extension, which is going to keep him signed through 2031. How do you know 12 years from now that that quarterback is worth the $50 million you're going to pay him? I mean,
And you don't.
you don't. So
You don't. I mean,
it's
they're on the hook for 400 million guaranteed or something like that.
it
Of this
seems
500 million, oof.
it seems absolutely ridiculous that you'd be willing to bet that he's not going to have an injury, that he's going to be the same level that he was last year for the next 12 years. I just
This is their way of saying that we're going to be a contender. The Chiefs, we're going to be a contender for the next decade, or no one's going to get Patrick Mahomes.
right. Well, that could be
Like, because
too.
we cannot let him go. We can't afford to let him wander off to another team.
Yeah. I so there are buyouts in the deal. I mean, so you're talking about it doesn't it could push past $500 million is what they're saying, and then um, he he gets on the this is an example of just one of those things. On the third day of the 2021 league year, $40.45 million becomes guaranteed unless the Chiefs cut Mahomes with a $52 million buyout.
So
So
they could back out of this whole thing.
and the buyout goes up over the next 3 years. It just goes to 70 million, 78 million. I mean, I don't know. So in 2025, Mahomes stands to have another 38 million guaranteed against $41.95 million buyout. A $49.4 million roster bonus for 2027 is guaranteed on the third day of the 2026 league year. Stupid stuff like that, and you hear it and you go, "What? Yeah, I mean he's going to make $50 million for just being on the roster in 2027." And I'm
That's a
like,
pretty good deal for him.
that's all you got to do is show up. Um, yeah. Anyway, it's just I think that the extent of the contract. I'm not saying he's not worth the money. I am kind of saying he's not worth the money. But what I'm saying is he's the length of the contract is so
It's
ridiculous.
ridiculous.
This
Yeah.
is this is what A-Rod did back in the '90s when he signed his $250 million 10-year deal with was it Texas?
Was it
I
Texas?
think it was Texas that signed him, and then they dealt him to the Yankees, and which worked out pretty good for the Yankees. I mean, I'm not gonna
That was a
lie.
contract that Texas couldn't afford to keep anymore.
Correct. Yeah, that's the thing. Um, I don't know. It seems like a lot of money. Maybe I'm wrong. It just seems like too much and too long to be guaranteeing someone, hey, in 2030, he's going to still be our quarterback. How many people are that way right now? How many NFL quarterbacks that are current NFL quarterbacks can you name that have been on the roster 10 years or more and
No,
are still
a handful.
productive? There's a handful. Yeah.
There's a
So,
handful.
well, Brady's not even in that category anymore. So, right?
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Drew
Yeah,
Brees,
he walked out. Philip Rivers is still productive.
he's on a different team.
Oh, that's right.
Aaron
Not
Rodgers,
Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers.
Aaron Rodgers, Drew
He's
Brees. Go ahead.
man.
Go
Matt
ahead.
Stafford.
Yeah, Russell Wilson hasn't even been in the league that long, I don't think.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, that's funny.
and Matt Stafford either. Um, so it's just one of those things where I say, you're going to say, oh, he's going to be on our team for the next 12 years. Okay. I
Sure.
doubt it. I can name you 3 or 4 quarterbacks that did that in recent memory, but you have to go back to the 80s to find quarterbacks that stuck around for more than 10 years on a single team. I mean,
Yeah.
that's back when, John Elway, Dan Marino, Jim Kelly, those guys were on those teams forever, and they played one team, and that's where they quit.
That's back when the teams had all the power.
I guess, or back when when they just made the players happy, they didn't want to go anywhere else. I mean,
Possibly, yeah.
yeah.
I
So
I'm curious to see how this is going to make. I've already heard it. DeAndre Hopkins tweeted out about Deshaun Watson getting paid next. And it's like, is Deshaun Watson even in the same conversation as Patrick Mahomes? I don't believe so. Deshaun Watson has undershined every year. He is
Well,
he is not as polished.
well, speaking of Deshaun Jackson, since you brought it up,
Wait, I said Deshaun Watson.
oh, Deshaun Watson. I thought you said Deshaun
Watson.
Jackson. I heard, I heard,
No,
I
no,
heard the
Deshaun
other. I heard the other
Watson.
topic.
I'm talking about the other quarterbacks who aren't that good, who are going to come out and
So,
scream for paydays, like Dak Prescott and Deshaun Watson. And it's like, you
well,
guys are not that good.
it begs the question of Lamar Jackson,
Lamar Jackson, yeah.
who I feel like could be in that category because he's a more dynamic. Patrick Mahomes' arm is better, sure. Lamar Jackson's legs are way better, and he's clearly showed that last year. That makes him way more dangerous. So I don't know. I think if you don't have the team around you, is Patrick Mahomes the NFL MVP if he played for the Packers last year?
I don't know. You'd have to think he could be.
You would like to think that, but the talent level is not the same on the Packers as it was on the Chiefs.
Oh no, Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelsey and
Right.
just a whole plethora of weapons. Yeah, no, it's not the same. But
Right.
we also don't know.
There's a chance he could have been, but I think his numbers would have been a lot less.
Yeah, also that's playing in a different division. The
Well,
Broncos have been reeling a little bit.
but
The Raiders have not been very good. The Chargers have not been very good. So he pretty much gets spotted a couple games a year.
but
Patrick Mahomes does.
it has always been my contention that the only way to compare NFL players is to put them on a different team and with different talent and see if they're going to be the same to try and determine if that would be the difference. Because if you're talking about, oh, can this team, Patrick Mahomes is great. He had a great year last year, right?
Yeah,
He had a great team around him.
yeah,
Okay, if he doesn't have a great team around him, can he still make them great? Or will it affect him in such a way that he no longer looks great?
agreed.
And
It's the Tom Brady thing. Was
sure,
Tom Brady
well,
good or was it Belichick or
we're gonna
what?
find out.
But no, we're not. It's skewed because he still brought Gronk with him. And he still walks into a 1,000-yard receiver in Mike Evans, and he still has other great players around him. It's not like he didn't go to the Dolphins.
To be fair, I was looking at statistics earlier today, just all kinds of numbers, and I was throwing numbers out. I was like, so you realize just so NFL fans have been sort of brainwashed, if you will, into what is a good season and what's acceptable. You know what I mean? What's a good NFL rusher have for a year? Right?
1,500,
Okay.
1,300.
It should be. It should be 1,500. Let's say that.
Yeah,
But 1,000 yard season is what people have been measuring NFL running backs by for I don't know how long. And you realize that at 16 games, you only need 66 yards a game to get 1,000 yards.
yeah,
If your running back only averages 66 yards a game, I don't feel that to be a great running back. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Yet he's going to have 1,000 yards. If he rushes for 80 yards a game, now he's at 1,200 yards a season rusher.
yeah.
What? That doesn't seem right. And you I kind of feel like to be in that upper echelon category of running backs, you need 100 yards a game. Well, that's 1,600 yards. Almost nobody rushes for that because there's no durability for one thing anymore.
That's true.
So, and then they pass a lot more. Everybody's
Yeah,
passing the football. So now let's go to the other side, the passing stats. So if you go to passing season, what's a good NFL quarterback who leads the league in passing? Now you have to have 4,000 yards passing to lead the
all
league.
right.
It's going to be 4,000. Last year, Jameis Winston led the league in passing yards. He had 5,100 passing yards.
You guys had
Right.
30 for 30.
So if you got 4,000 passing yards on the year, that means you need 1,000 yards every 4 games, right? So
Right.
that's 250 yards a game. Well, that doesn't sound great. I mean, it's good.
It's good.
It's solid. But if you went out and said, "Oh, this guy threw for 250 yards and 2 touchdowns and an interception," you'd be like, okay. It doesn't sound
You would
like
say it's a decent game. You'd be like, oh, he did all right.
Yeah, I mean, depending upon what the rest of the team did, that's a win or lose. That's a half 50-50 ball
Right.
there, right?
That was just as easily a loss as it is a win.
Correct. But if he comes out and you say, "Oh, he threw for 400 yards and 4 touchdowns," you're like, "Oh, well, they won that game. There's no way they lost that game because just look at what he did," right?
Yeah.
But if you threw for 400 yards a game, that would be 6,000 yards for the season. And nobody's done that ever, and nobody's going to do that ever. So it becomes this skewed perception of what's great and what's not great because when you think of a guy that's Drew Brees, let's say, who's 5 times he's led the NFL in passing, and 4,400, 4,800 yards, that's a lot of yardage, no doubt. But it's still at 4,800, it's 300 yards a game.
Well, the same people that make the argument that about the numbers will also make the argument about the titles. It just depends on what the situation that fits their need. In my opinion, success is a mixture of both. Your team has to do well, and you have to have a decent performance. All right, because your team won't do well if you don't. So you have to play well, and your team has to play well around you. It's a little bit of both. But then there are the people that be like, oh, he had 6,000 passing yards, which, like you said, never been done. He had 6,000 passing yards. He's the MVP. It's like, yeah, but his team won 4 games. It's like, I don't understand that. But then on the other hand, people will be like, well, how many titles does he have? It's like, well, he's got none, but he threw for 6,000 passing yards. It's like, it's confusing. You can't win when you're trying to argue why people are good. The only thing I know is only one person last year rushed for over 100 yards a game, and that's Derrick Henry. And
Right.
that guy was a machine. He's
Yeah.
the only person who was over 100 yards a game. And only one other person was over 90 behind him. And that's Nick Chubb, not Christian McCaffrey, not big payday Zeke. None of these other guys. It was Nick Chubb. Like, I mean, come on. Like, it just goes to show it doesn't matter. Like, these guys are going to argue for paydays that measure their success, and then they're going to be okay.
Yeah.
Most of these guys are going to be all right.
I so we're gonna switch a little bit and we're gonna talk about Deshaun Jackson,
Sean Jackson, yeah.
who had an interesting week this week because of his anti-Semitic social media posts
Sure.
and how do you? So the Philadelphia Eagles. Let's go here. The Philadelphia Eagles penalized him this week, although they didn't say what the penalty was.
Sure.
Because that's when we're gonna handle it in house. You always hear that, and whatever. Um, but they had to release a statement. He literally forcing the team to release a statement. This has been a difficult and emotional week for our community and organization. The Philadelphia Eagles do not tolerate hate towards any individual or group. We believe in respect and equality for all races, ethnicities, and faiths. We as an organization want to help be an instrument for positive change. This can only occur through strong, deliberate actions and a commitment to learn and grow. And they are right. Absolutely right. And there is really no place for the kind of comment, and I'm not even going to repeat it here today. You can go look it up, but there was no call for that. We're in the middle. We are struggling as a country with a lot of things at the moment, social injustice and the pandemic that some people are telling you isn't a pandemic. That's not happening. We're torn. We're divided in multiple ways, politically, racially. And it's just this factioning this of America where they've broken it down into these little pieces, and it's causing a lot of grief. And we need to get reunited. Okay, getting off my soapbox now, but there's no place to be putting those statements out. You have a platform to do good and do change, and if that's what you think needs to be changed, then you need to do that. But you know that your employer, the NFL, the Philadelphia Eagles, they're not in this current climate. There's no room for that. You can't do that. You can't come out and say that, you know, those kind of comments and yeah, come down on an ethnicity or a race or a religion in our current climate. You know it's going to be met with harshly. So I feel like it was just really, really poor decision on his part. Whether you have those feelings or not, those are probably something that should have been in. And then, of course, Julian Edelman calls him out on it, pretty much. And it's interesting. What was your take on the original comment by Deshaun Jackson, and how do you get to that point? I
I
mean,
believe that people have a tendency, and it's specific to this age of retweet without thinking type deal. Like, oh, I kind of agree with that retweet, and now it's your opinion because you put it back out into the world coming from you. I think that that's kind of the scenario that we hit here with Deshaun Jackson, which is that he read something that he kind of agreed with, but didn't really understand where it came from, didn't really understand the bigger context, didn't really understand enough about it, and didn't even take the time to retweeted it, made it his own, sent it out there in the world, and then just got blasted for it, as he should, because he was being stupid and he said a stupid thing and he republished a stupid thing. So I think that happens way too much, where people own stupid quotes, stupid sayings, stupid ideas because they're not thinking enough when they have their damn phone in their hand.
Yeah.
It's just, I think that's just all it is. Do I think that Deshaun Jackson really feels this way? Probably not. I bet he wouldn't understand half of what that guy was talking about. He
Right.
probably doesn't even understand half of what Hitler's talking about. That's not to say Deshaun Jackson's not a smart guy. That's just to say that I don't quite understand what half of what he's talking about. And if I don't understand it, I'm not sure that a guy who's taken multiple shots to the head over a 15-year career is going to understand it any more than me. All right? So if I don't understand it, and I feel like I'm pretty attuned to that stuff, I don't think he understands it, which means he's owning something he doesn't understand. Yes, stupidity is forgivable. I can forgive stupidity.
Yeah.
It still should come with punishment. It should still come with being called out, as he was, but it's a forgivable thing. However, when you have oh my gosh, when Julian Edelman calls him out, there's two ways to go about that. One's to be the really harsh, vile, volatile way that the world kind of is, and the other way is the way that Julian Edelman did it, which I really loved, which was that, dude, this was wrong, but let me help teach you some stuff.
Right.
Let me help teach you why this was wrong. Not just tell you it was wrong. I'm going to teach you why it was wrong. And that's the catalyst for change, is when you see someone being an idiot, to not just call them an idiot, but try and teach them why they're being an idiot and what it means to be smarter. And I like the way it went.
Yeah, the end result might be better. And now it looks like Deshaun Jackson's doing all those things that he probably should have done to begin with. In terms of visiting with a Holocaust survivor, and he met with a group that's fighting anti-Semitism in the Philadelphia area, and I think Edelman invited him to visit the Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington D.C. And by the way, folks, if you've never been to that museum, I cannot think of a more somber but eye-opening experience than that. I've been in it, and through it you literally get goosebumps and tears going through that thing. And I know some people wouldn't want to experience that, but if you've never done it, I highly recommend that you do it. If you're on a trip to Washington D.C., that is one of the best museum memorials that you'll ever go through. It is really heart wrenching to go through. But anyway, so I think Edelman inviting him to go. Yeah, they should go. And the tweet
Is it even open right now?
Oh, I don't know. I have no idea.
It probably is not. There's no way it's open.
I mean, with the current administration, everything's open, right?
Yeah, except 4 or 5 wore a mask today. You see that? That was all in the headlines. He finally put on a mask in public.
I was told it wasn't a thing. I was told it was going to go away. I was told we were in a good spot. We're in a good place. I was told a couple months ago by a close presidential advisor that he may or may not have been related to, that 60,000 deaths was not bad.
Not bad at all.
Not bad. So anyway, I mean, that's enough of that. But so, yeah, I don't know if it's open or not, but if it is, if you're going there, if you happen to be in the DC area, you should go. It is fantastic. It is a great, fantastic is not a great word, but it is a experience you shouldn't pass up. Yeah, but the tweet that Edelman put out on Saturday, it was Friday, said that, this is a quote, "Deshaun and I spoke for a while last night. We're making plans to use our experiences to educate one another and grow together. Stay tuned." I like that.
Nothing wrong with that.
So that's perfect.
That's what you want. All of this movement has been preached around. We have to stop. We have to listen. We have to educate each other. Yeah. It's a two-way street. Education happens both ways. And this was an instance where, do you think Deshaun Jackson ever thought about going to the Holocaust Museum? No, he probably never gave a crap. It doesn't matter to him. It didn't matter to him, and now it matters to him. But that's the point: is educating yourself before you make the comments, before you press retweet. That's important, and this should be a learning lesson for him. And hopefully, he never puts out another stupid, ignorant tweet again.
Right. So let's talk about tweets and responses. One last thing about that, and this is switching sports, but that's okay. So um, there's a United States senator from Missouri, Josh Hawley, who put out a tweet um, that said basically if the NBA is going to put social cause statements on uniforms, why not support our troops or back the blue? Or, given how much dollars the NBA makes in China, how about free Hong Kong? Today I wrote to Adam Silver to ask for answers. And there's a copy of his letter that he wrote to Adam Silver that he wasted the United States Senate's paper on. Um,
Taxpayer dollars.
in my opinion, I mean, that's really okay. And he's really upset apparently about the NBA. I mean, apparently he's got some concerns. So about their social cause statements. Well, why? Why does it matter to you what the NBA wants to put on the back of their uniforms, and why is it not okay to put Black Lives Matter? Because that's what I read out of it is you're telling me it's not okay that you want to let people put, I can't breathe or Black Lives Matter or any of those statements on their jerseys. What you want them to put is something about the troops, which to me is ridiculous. Well, the reply to that from ESPN reporter Adrian Wojnarowski, he's one of the senior NBA reporters for ESPN. He replied to that tweet in an email to Senator Hawley, and it basically just said two words: "F you," is what it said. And so then, of course, Senator Hawley retweets and says, "Don't criticize China or express support for law enforcement to ESPN. It makes them real mad." He has to be, that guy about it,
Oh yeah.
and which led to a suspension for Wojnarowski and an apology. He basically said I was disrespectful and I made a regrettable mistake. Sorry for the way I handled myself. I'm reaching out immediately to Senator Hawley to apologize directly. I also need to apologize to my ESPN colleagues because I know my actions were unacceptable and should not reflect on any of them. Do you think that's something he needs to apologize for? Does that something that he was? I mean, maybe wrong in the way he said it, but not
Yeah.
wrong in what he in what he conveyed.
He's not wrong in what he conveyed. So the reason why this Holly guy has an opinion is because his voters have an opinion.
Oh, yeah.
Josh Hawley could give two craps less about what it says on the back of an NBA jersey. Dude's never dribbled a basketball in his life. All right, he does not care. But his interesting voters, they have opinions. They don't like it. They didn't like what was going on with banning Confederate flags. They didn't like what's going on here. So if he says something, this guy's got our back. Let's vote for him. Let's keep him as our senator. It all stands. He could care less. He could care less. And so Woj is right. Woj is absolutely right, man. This dude's a clown. This dude's a tool. He's a puppet for his people. He's not even real. So yeah, I'm okay with him calling him out. Should you send it from your ESPN email? Probably not. Could you have said something a little more eloquent to get your point across? Absolutely. I know you can. I've been listening to you drop Woj bobs on me in the best ways possible for a decade. So, yes, he could have done it better. But should the message have changed? Absolutely not. He could have said what I just said and called him a clown and a tool, and it would have been better than
Yeah.
just saying a cuss word.
I
Because if there's one thing these dudes love, it's when people try and put gasoline on their fire.
yeah, I agree with that, and yet I applaud the bluntness of the statement.
Yeah.
Just to be able to speak your mind when you want to is kind of, I mean, isn't that what we're all about? Isn't that what we're supposed to be? Everyone wants to use it to their advantage when
When it's appropriate.
when it's appropriate. Oh yeah, I don't want you to be able to say Black Lives Matter on the back of those NBA jerseys because I don't think that's appropriate. Regardless of whether you have a First Amendment right to say what you want to say, the NBA has a right to say what it wants to say. I don't want you to do that because it offends me. Oh, it doesn't matter who it offends. The whole point is you should be able to speak it. You should be able to say it if that's what you want to say, right?
Right.
Within reason and bounds of the constraints. Your professional email is probably not the proper platform.
Nope.
That should have been on a Gmail or a Google or a Yahoo at best.
Right.
Um,
But he owned it. The
but he
fact that he
did.
sent it from his but he sent the fact that he sent it from his email,
Yeah.
his work email,
Right.
says that he was not trying to hide himself in this moment. He could have easily Kevin Durant and made a secret Twitter and called some people out, but no, he went straight for the guy's throat,
He went,
and
yeah, he went right at him. I applaud the going right at him. I have to admit, I'm on board. Um, okay, that being said, so let's move to the one thing that we really want to talk about is who the NFL season's coming. We know it's
It's on.
coming in some form or fashion. We don't know how many games we're going to see. We don't know who's going to be playing. We don't know any of that stuff because everything's up in the air. But we do know there were a bunch of rookies drafted in June, and we are excited about seeing them play football this year, at least some of them. So
Yes.
I want to ask you the question: who are you excited about, the most excited to see play football come this fall?
Oh man, you already know who it is.
Sure.
It is Justin Herbert. It's biased. It's deep in my blood. I can't help it. I want to see Justin Herbert, and I want to see him be super successful. Um, I think that he's going to be in for a pretty big day. Uh, Behind that, though, I'll pick somebody that probably isn't in my wheelhouse. J.K. Dobbins.
Oh, J.K. Dobbins, nice.
He's going to the Ravens. I think that could be a really good situation for him with Mark Ingram being there. He's a really good pass catcher out of the backfield. Um, and with Lamar Jackson obviously being next to him, I think that he could set up well to be a real kind of X factor for that team.
Yeah, I like I like I want to watch Herbert for sure. I mean,
Oh yeah, who
yeah,
does?
he's a guy I'm interested to see. Two more players. Well, three. I'm gonna name you three more players I'm interested to see. One is Jordan Love.
Jordan.
I
Oh
I,
yeah,
I
if
want
if we see him.
if we see him, well, the odds are over the last couple of years, 2 or 3 years, that Aaron Rodgers is gonna get hurt at some point,
Oh yeah,
and
then it's
and,
the
and we're
love
gonna
stuff.
see him. So it would be interesting to see if he's the heir apparent, or if he's can help, or if maybe he's better than Aaron Rodgers. Has anybody ever thought about that? That Aaron Rodgers might be had enough injuries, had enough. He's been in the league a few years. Is there just a chance that a rookie could be better than him given the opportunity? I mean, I'm just
Or will
saying.
he be another Brett Hundley?
Oh yeah, right. I mean, there's the other end of the spectrum. Yeah, he could be. He could be Brett. I don't know, but I also want to see Chase Young. Um,
Chase Young. Yep.
and his new Washington to be named later team. Um, I want to see if the I can't even call them the Redskins anymore. What do you call them now? Because we don't know what it's going to be, and they haven't announced it yet. But they're going to change. We just don't know what it is. So um, I'm interested to see if he can become a difference maker. He was so dominant in college and every play that he's in there seemed like it was disruptive, or people would design it to go away from him just so they wouldn't have to be disrupted. Um, is he going to be that kind of player in the NFL? Is he the I don't know, J.J. Watt, um, Miles Garrett? I can't think of another one. Anyway, there's too many. But so is he going to be that kind of player that is disruptive every play? You got to account for him. You got to make sure you block him, or you block him and chip him at the same time. Is he that guy, or was he just so much better than the college athletes? And maybe he gets to the pros and becomes one of those. Meh, he's okay,
He's all right. Yeah.
right? You know, I
We'll
don't know.
find out.
Hey, we're gonna find out. And then the other one, and this is just purely because I'm telling you, how I feel about him is Joe Burrow, and I still feel like he's going to have issues adjusting to NFL football. I think that's going to be. I think he's going to play day one, and I think that Cincinnati's going to be all in. And I just don't know if they have the team behind him to make him successful as a rookie right from the get go, which is going to make it hard for him. And when he experiences the failure after last year never having failure, right?
Yeah.
When you go through your career and you don't experience failure very often, it is really hard to adjust to an 8-8 football team, right? The next year.
Yeah.
Oh, national champions. We won 15 games and we're, whoa, this is, and then the next year you're 7-9. That takes a big ego hit. It really does. And you got to be strong to survive that kind of stuff. Or even worse, your team goes 1-15. So I'm curious to see how he'll handle that. I still don't think he's as good as he was last year. I think that was just one tremendous year with the right athletes at the right time when Alabama wasn't as good as they could have been, and he overperformed. Let's put it that way. That's my
Yeah.
feeling. I don't know. We'll see. We'll find out. And then, of course, as a Dolphins fan, we got Tua in Miami, and I'm curious to see how long he can last, if he even plays. Also, so it'll be interesting to watch. There's a lot of good. Brandon Ayuk, the wide receiver from Arizona State. Henry Ruggs, Jerry Judy.
Yeah,
Um,
that receiving trio of Jerry Judy, Henry Ruggs, and Justin Jefferson. I'm
yeah,
curious about that.
that's an interesting. And then the other big commodity in the draft was linemen. And how do you measure that? Again, because I can't measure that. As a casual, no, I'm more than casual, let's say moderate NFL football fan. I'm not casual fan as in I don't know anything, but I'm not an expert in that I know everything. How do you measure how good a tackle is? Sacks given up? Well,
Yeah, usually.
what if the best player on the other team lines up on the other side to avoid you? Because you're not going to switch left to right tackles. You're going to be on the side you're on.
Well, then that's a metric of success right there. The
I,
fact they had to change their alignment.
I guess that's true, but if you have a weaker rusher rushing at you every week because they know you're the best blocker, you're going to look great because you're
Yeah,
going to block every. It's
that's
kind of
right.
self fulfilling. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, I'm pretty excited about that.
It's gonna be a big year.
It is going to be a big year. Do we want to talk about social justice messages?
Yeah, we can do that real quick.
Okay, so the NBA released their list of what is approved social justice messages on the back of the uniforms in place of the names. And some players have decided they're just going to go with their names. One of those players, by the way, is LeBron James.
Yeah,
Who
that's a big moment.
I don't understand that fully. What when you have the big stage and as outspoken as he is about all this stuff, why is he choosing not to go with a message?
I've never thought LeBron James to be too outspoken. Like you never really saw him marching. You never really saw him doing rallies and stuff like that. You never really saw him doing too much of that stuff. He was always pretty subtle. LeBron James off the court is a pretty relaxed person, it seems like. It's kind of strange. Like it's kind of strange to have that big of a personality. And yes, he does these great things. Like he opened the school in Akron for children, things like that. And he's got scholarships set up everywhere. He's doing a lot of great things, but he seems to be much more about doing something, buying a school, building a school, something like that, than just saying something.
Yeah.
So I can honestly see that being more in his wheelhouse to just be like, I'm just gonna have my name. Like
Yeah.
I'll find another way to do it. I mean, and does he really need to? Like he's gonna get the podium time after the game, win or lose. He could
Well,
use all of that time for it.
do you think it's harmful to their movement, to the Black Lives Matter movement in general? Social
Yes.
justice, that he's not wearing, he's the biggest name in the NBA, and he's opted not to basically back your movement
Yeah.
in public when he has an opportunity to. And I feel like I don't understand. I don't understand it.
It
This
definitely doesn't seem great that not everyone is on board.
right.
Like that's kind of what you want. You want everybody to be on board and on the same page. And him opting not to, mostly because he says nobody consulted with him. He's like, nobody really asked me, so I'm just going to go with my name. That's kind of how he kind of played that off. I don't know if that's the way it was, or if he chose not to, or what. He said it's just something that didn't seriously resonate with my mission, with my goal. I would have loved to have a say on what went on the back of the jersey. I had a couple things on my mind, but I wasn't part of the process, and that's okay. So he's being very backseated about it. That's not to say that he isn't in the car. That's just to say that it's just to say that he isn't driving.
Is it
It,
sour? Is it sour grapes? They didn't ask me, so I'm not doing it.
I don't know.
That's
I don't
kind.
know. I can't decide. I just cannot get a bead on what where he stands on a lot of things. Like I know how he feels about, like, he's been outspoken about the China stuff, and by outspoken I mean in the few minutes of a press conference. He's not like actively doing anything. So I
So
just don't know.
I read the statement that says I would have loved to have a say so on what would have went on the back of my jersey. What I hear when he says that is, and he said I had a couple of things in mind, but I wasn't part of the process, which is okay. I'm absolutely okay with that. What it sounds to me like is the NBA didn't ask me, and the ones that I wanted, they said no to, so I'm not going to put one on the back of my jersey. And that sounds to me like to heck with the movement. I'm protesting the NBA at this point.
It's consistent with playoff LeBron. Turn off the Twitter, turn off the Facebook,
I
turn off the
guess.
distractions.
I
Well,
guess.
that's been LeBron's thing for 14 years is When it comes playoff time, you turn off the distractions. This is right in that wheelhouse.
I suppose. It just there's so many different approved messages that I can't imagine they're one of those he couldn't just decide to do. Um, speak up. That's one of those, that you could have put on there. Education reform. He could have put all kinds. There's all kinds of things that were, peace. That's all he had to put on the back was peace. But he didn't.
Yeah,
He didn't even opt for any of those, which seems weird to me. It just seems
it
like a, a,
it does seem strange,
a blown opportunity to be a advocate in a
but
public environment.
he might have something else up his sleeve. Every year he releases a pair of equality shoes,
Right.
right? They say equality in big letters on the backs of the shoes.
Right.
Maybe there's something else in the works this year. Maybe there's a Black Lives Matter shoe coming out. Maybe he'll have other ways of spreading his message that just aren't the back of his jersey.
Well, here's another issue I have is that in a video of an interview of the interview where they asked him about it, he's wearing a hat that says "I am more than an athlete." So
Right.
so right there, you're putting out a statement.
Yeah, but that's a direct shot at somebody.
Sure, it is,
Yeah.
but still,
So
I'm like,
that was somebody that called him out, so he responded.
yeah, I
That's
suppose.
and also that's Nike has a whole line of more than an athlete stuff. So that sponsorship related in that regard.
Oh, sure.
They had Air Force Ones, LeBrons, a bunch of other shoes that released that all had the ability to you could take like a Sharpie and write on them and write like messages and things like that. But on the tongues of all of them, they said I am more than an athlete.
Yeah.
So yeah, but that was a thing. That was another thing that was brought to him. Some lady called him out.
Yeah.
And he's like, all right, well, I'm not just going to shut up and dribble. Okay. So I give him little props for sticking with continuing to stick it to that person.
Right.
But yeah, you're right. It does seem like for being a big social advocate that this is an opportunity to just amplify your voice a little bit. But the reality is that this whole thing is going to be super amplified. There's going to be more people watching basketball this fall than any other basketball playoffs in history ever. It's going to be insane. And on every court is the words Black Lives Matter is going to be written.
Yeah.
So the fact that it's on the back of his jersey, it doesn't really seem to be too big of an issue. I mean, do you need to see the words 300 times over the course of a game? Or is that overhead camera that you're going to get that's constantly going to show it going to be enough? So I kind of get it, but also you're right, though. It does seem like it was a little bit missed.
So there's one more thing in the NBA realm that I just kind of want to touch on briefly because we talked about it multiple weeks ago. I can't remember which show it was, but it had to be at least 2 months ago. We talked about Zion Williamson and
Oh yeah,
and money and
getting paid.
Did he or did he not, or did his family or did they not get paid by somebody for him to attend Duke or to do whatever?
Oh yeah.
And the latest thing, the headline basically from the Sporting News says Zion Williamson's family received $400,000 payment before he went to Duke. Says
Yep.
affidavit. So an affidavit filed in court alleges, and of course it's a marketing agency that he was with before he left. He left them just before starting his NBA career and went to a different agency. And they're suing him for $100 million and levying this allegation against him in court, basically saying that, hey, we paid you guys $400,000 to your family, basically. And
paid you $400,000 and got you into Duke.
Got you into Duke. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. So it seems like one of those things we're gonna have to keep following, and it may or may not. It's not going to affect Zion Williamson in the slightest. I'm just telling you that right now. His NBA career, he'll still be an NBA player. It's not going to affect him. What'll happen is it'll be a punishment on Duke at some point, or it'll be a punishment on student athletes getting representation at some point, or it'll be, you know what I mean? The negative effects are going to be on someone else. He's not going to pay for this.
Yeah, the thing that I hate that comes from all this is people are posting about it. They're saying, "Oh, he received improper benefits, punish Duke," and then you have these other people who come out and say they made millions of dollars off of him.
Mm-hmm.
What's wrong with him getting some money? And in my head, I'm like, that's the deal. You come to college, we make money off you. You leave college, you make money. That's the deal.
Right.
That's how this works. So for you to make money while you're here, put our program in jeopardy, put our coaches in jeopardy, put other players in jeopardy. That's not fair. That's not part of the deal here. All right.
Right.
Yes, it sucks that you have to be a poor, starving college student with your 400K for a year discreetly. I'm sorry that your C class Benz is not a fucking G wagon. Oh darn it, was not a G wagon. All right, but you have to deal with it for 1 year. That's all you have to deal with it for,
Right.
and then you can go to the pros. You can sign your big payday. You can make $3 million a year, and you never have to look back. I hate that people try and circumvent the system too much. It's a deal. It's a deal. Yes, there are other people in college who are not going to go pro in 1 year because they're not that good. Peyton Pritchard is not going to go pro in 1 year. He's not that good. He doesn't have a place for him in the NBA. So he couldn't do that. But also no one's going to pay him to come there either. It's just a weird thing. I'm just tired of people acting like, oh, because he tried to get a slice of the pie, that we should all let it go because Duke's getting the bigger chunk. It's like, no, it's the way it works. You suck it up and deal with it for a little bit, so that way you can go make money later. We make the money in the meantime. We amplify your voice and your image, and you make more money.
Right.
I don't like it.
We'll follow this up again, and we're gonna keep on it as more news comes around because who knows where this is gonna go, but it is an interesting story, and it is one that like I said, whether it's true or not, nothing's going to happen to Zion, but it's going to happen to someone else, and
Yeah.
that's kind of the way all those college sanctions. Anytime the NCAA steps in and there's a violation, it's because someone before you did something terrible, and now the people that are there pay the price for it. And I don't like that about the situation, but there's nothing you can do, especially with college basketball, because they're one and done. Come to
Yeah.
school for 1 year and I'm gone. See ya. Have a nice day. I'd rather just not go to college. I'd rather just go into the NBA. But, what are you going to do? All right, so we're going to finish this off. We had the trivia question at the beginning of the show. In case anybody didn't hear the trivia question, I'm going to give you the trivia question again. It's brought to you by Stavenstone Wine Estates in Hood River. Call them at 541-946-3750 or email them info@stavenstone.com. The trivia question was, are you ready again?
Yes.
Refreshing you. Since 1958, the NFL's season rushing leader has rushed for over 1,000 yards every season except one. So the first part of this question is, what year was that? Do you know that off the top of your head?
Not. I have no answers to this
Okay.
question at all.
So the first part of the question is, what year was it? Second is, who did it? Thirdly, how many yards did he rush for? And then the bonus question is, what team did he play for? But it's really not a bonus question. You'll get it once you know who it is. So the answer, are you ready?
Yeah.
So the answer is 1982. 1982 was a strike-shortened season where they only played 9 games. Didn't play 16 games since they had NFL players strike, shortened the season to 9 games. So 1982, Freeman McNeil of the New York Jets led the NFL in rushing with 786 yards.
Interesting.
Yeah, so that's the only time since 1958 that a player has not rushed for over 1,000 yards to lead the NFL.
Wow.
There you go. That's your trivia. Yeah, I know, right? I went deep. I did. I went deep.
Yeah, you need to start making them a little easier.
I don't know if I can make them any easier.
Make them since I've been alive. How about that?
Well, that's not. I mean, this is something that I figure you as a sports radio personality should know.
Yeah, my Freeman McNeil knowledge is limited. I'll tell you that.
It was not something that and that's funny we say that because I watch the morning shows. Let's use an example. Get Up, that's on ESPN with Mike Greenberg, and he puts out a trivia question all the time, and it always seems like someone knows the answer to it. He puts out these trivia questions that, in 1946, this one guy only made one basket for this team and blah, 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 blah. And they know who the answer is. And I'm like, there's no way you know that. How do you know that?
Google knows that for you.
Well, I'm sure that they, it's like the quiz show where they feed them the answers ahead of time. But I mean, I'm not saying it's rigged. I'm just saying it smells fishy because So, yes, Freeman McNeil. And you know what? We went the whole episode without saying Jimmer Fredette. So I had to sneak it in there. Next week. No, there is no next week. We're going to be off next week. I will be on vacation. So, take that, everyone. And the following week, the 26th, will be our next show. 1 p.m. on Sunday, July 26th. We're going to discuss the AFC. It's going to be our beginning of our NFL preview for the year. We're going to discuss the AFC, the entire AFC. I know that's a lot of teams, but we aren't going to probably talk about them all because some of them are terrible. Um,
Right.
but we're going to talk about the AFC and our predictions for the AFC for 2020 to include the bold prediction of who's going to be the AFC champion and be in the Super Bowl next year. So we'll do that in 2 weeks. And then the following week, which is what, circa August the 2nd, we are going to do the NFC. And then the following week, we will debate who's going to win the Super Bowl. So that's our NFL preview. We're going to do it. It's going to take 3 weeks to do it, but, we got time because, we've got that kind of time. And we may have NBA sports news or NBA scores to actually tell you about at some point. I'm hoping. We may have Major League Baseball scores to tell you about at some point. I'm hoping. We may have we may have MLS scores, and not all the games have been postponed, but they're headed that way.
Yeah.
So who knows what we'll have? But I'm going to continue to update you on the Korean baseball. I'm telling you, get up at 2 a.m. and watch a game.
Oh, jeez.
It's as good as it gets. And Sunday morning, do it Sunday morning. You know what? Stay up late Saturday night. You're going to be up late drinking anyway, right? So Saturday night falls into Sunday morning at 2 a.m. Turn on the baseball and we'll start watching it. So
No,
okay,
not doing it.
all right.
Not doing it.
So anyway, remember that we're live streaming on YouTube every weekend, darn near. We won't be on next weekend, but almost every weekend. And we're on Twitter at Lamm Sports, on Facebook under the Best Lamm Sports Show. You can email us, lambsports@gmail.com. Don't forget to check out the webpage, www.lambsports.com. And by the way, I'm going to let everybody know this, that we're going to incorporate this week.
Ooh.
So yeah, Lonely Tree Media will actually be a thing, and then the Best Lamm Sports Show falls under Brain Rock Productions, which is a division of Lonely Tree Media. So there you go. There's our structure. I just told everybody the secret. But we're going to incorporate this week, and I'm thinking, Parker, you're going to be what? Executive Vice President. Something.
Oh.
We're going to put you in charge of in charge of product development.
Okay.
I think that's the official title we're going to give you.
I can make T-shirts.
Right. See? Perfect. A business card. We're going to have everything. So eventually we'll just get some memorabilia. We can, some merchandise we can give to people.
I like that.
T-shirts and whatnot. So we're going to have to come up with a better logo, though. So think about that one. All right. We'll work on that. All right. So we want to thank our sponsors, the Range in Yakima, Boss Kitty Yarns, Stave and Stone Wine in the States, and Hood River. This has been a Brain Rock production, a division of Lonely Tree Media. And thanks for listening, everybody. We'll talk to you all next week.